Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
All right, welcome back to the show. We've got a great guest for you today. We have Lee Eisenstaedt, and Lee Eisenstaedt works with C-level executives on helping them create a culture and helping them look out for the landmines that might be associated with their task or with their assignments in their job. So welcome to the show, Lee.
Thank you, Tracy.
So let's get right into it. Tell us about your business and what type clients that you help.
The business is called Value Drivers, and we focus mainly on the newly appointed board members and CEOs and other C-level executives of middle market companies who are anxious about the pressure they're under to accelerate their growth or improve their profitability. And, their anxiety is coming from this incredible pressure they're under to grow the business, to improve the profits, but also to do it in a short period of time. And my own experience of doing this and working with others is that, you go in with great intentions of understanding the strategic landscape, of understanding why the customers use your service, of knowing, the strengths and weaknesses of that company's culture. But while you go in with full intent, as especially the newly appointed, what typically happens is you get drawn into so many problems the minute you land that you don't have time to do those things in a structured, disciplined way. And that's what we bring to our clients, is a structured, disciplined, quantitative approach to understanding culture and strategy and the loyalty of their customers.
Outstanding. How did you get involved in this field?
I've been onboarding myself. I've transitioned into a number of positions, but the one that really gave me a passion for it was about 10, 15 years ago. I had an assignment in France, and I was transferred there, and we sold our house, sold our cars. My wife even quit her job because this was supposed to be a 3 to 5 year assignment. And I get there, and things are going really well. I'm learning to get along with my new boss. I'm learning the language, which I didn't know, nor did my wife when we moved there. We're starting to try to understand the culture. I'm learning about my team and the 5 countries that I'm managing in addition to France. And all is going well. And then 6 weeks into it, my boss announces that he's leaving the company the next day. This is the guy that was my sponsor, my champion, my mentor in this assignment. And all of a sudden, I'm left just, by myself. I'm the only English-speaking American in the subsidiary, and didn't have any idea who would be replacing him. Would I get along with him or her? What was going to happen? And in talking to my wife about it that night, she said, you don't have any choice. You got to make this work. I quit my job. We sold our house. Like Cortez did. We burned the boats. There is no plan B. You got to make this work. And so then, we went out to dinner and talked about how I would do that. And I doubled down on learning the language, learning the culture. But I basically had to onboard myself until the new person was appointed. I was chief operating officer, and in some ways was acting, as a surrogate for the vice president general manager until they found a replacement. And that didn't take that long, but it was, weeks or a couple of months before that person was on board. And then I had to win his trust over and, get him up to speed on what I had learned in the sub. That all worked out really well, but it gave me this passion for making sure that, a passion for helping others get on board, but it also taught me the importance of knowing those things, the culture, the customers, the employees, what's the strategic issues you're facing. And you could spend a lot of time on things that weren't important, but how do you ferret out, those that are needing your attention from those that don't. And it was through that process and then subsequent job changes, starting, this is the second firm I've started, but starting my own firm the first time. I developed a lot of these tools that we now use to help others do this in a less chaotic, more disciplined way.
Well, that's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that with us. that that could be quite the challenge. You said 5 countries?
Yeah, I was responsible. I was not the general manager. I was the finance director, which meant I had finance, logistics, IT, all the accounting and finance, of course, customer service for France, which is where I was based, but also Portugal, Spain, Belgium, and Holland.
Nice.
So it was a dream job. It was a great job.
Yeah. It'd be tough enough in an English-speaking country, but let alone 5 different countries. So that's pretty impressive.
Well, and the only advantage, being a part of an American multinational, any email and anything of great importance was done in English.
Sure.
But within the company, within the sub, it was in the local language. Now, fortunately, when I went to Spain or Portugal, they all knew English or well enough. But in France, they always fell back into speaking French, which was a great way to learn it. It was a little bit of trial by fire, but I ended up, over the time, becoming pretty good at it. And to the point, it was kind of scary, to the point that after just 3 months in the job, I had to deliver, as the finance director, a state of the company address to 150 native French-speaking employees, and I had to do it all in French.
Wow.
That was scary, but I felt comfortable enough and gutsy enough to do it. I think it was more painful for them to listen to me than it was for me to actually do it. But right. I got comfortable enough with the language that I did that. I had to do that every 6 months. Certainly by the end of I was there about 3.5 years. By the end of that time, I gave it a lot of thought, but I wasn't scared of it. So
wow,
it was, awesome. As I said, jumping into the deep end all at once.
Yeah, I guess. So along the way, was there a book or a person that inspired you on your journey? I
mean, I found I can't point to a single person. I probably can if I think long enough. I mean, I know that I picked up books like the 100-Day Plan or the first 100 days and 90-day plan when I was doing the onboarding part of it. As far as being courageous, if you will, in taking on these assignments, I had a number of bosses. I was fortunate. I worked for Sam Johnson, the owner of SC Johnson that makes Windex and Pledge. And I worked in their family office for about 4 years. And so I got to work directly with Sam. And, I guess if you had to say, is there anyone that was an inspiration? Here was a guy that, just took on all kinds of challenges, whether it was new product development or the environment or expanding the company internationally. And he, being around him and seeing how he made decisions and actually participating in those decisions with him was quite a lesson, learning, a coachable moment, and that lasted almost 4 years. And that gave me the interest in getting an overseas assignment, but also the confidence to do it. So I guess if I had to look back, I draw heavily on what I learned during my 22 years at SC Johnson. Yeah, perfect. Was there any type of mindset training, or do you self-improvement type stuff? Have you anything? Yeah, I went through a number of. I would consider myself a lifelong learner. I've got a real. Some have said that I've got a dissatisfaction with satisfaction, and so I'm really curious about things. One of the things I was curious about was leadership, and I've always gravitated towards leadership development programs. I remember going to one in particular, the Center for Creative Leadership. I think they're in North Carolina. It's the program I went to. And that was an intensive 1 week, 360 feedback sort of program. And I came out of that, with a much better understanding of myself, what I needed to do if I wanted to get ahead. And a great example of that is I was never one. And maybe it's because I was a finance and operations exec, we tended to be more modest. I was never one to tell people, Tracy, I want a job in France, or I want this kind of assignment. I never did that. All of my assignments that I'd had, and I had some really good ones, were just because I worked hard and was recognized for it. But I came out of Center for Creative Leadership understanding that if I wanted something, there was a much better chance that I'd get it if I told people about it. And so when I got back from Center for Creative Leadership, which I really think was a watershed event in my development, I started meeting with people who could get me this assignment in Europe, the head of finance for Europe, one of the GMs of Europe, the CFO in the U.S., who had a lot of influence, and just making it clear that I wanted an overseas assignment if and when one came up. And that paid off big time. And from that, I learned that's what I had to do. I had to make my desires and aspirations clear to others. It wasn't shameless self-promotion. It was just making people aware that you wanted something and you were willing to sacrifice for it if you had to. But what did you have to do to get those kinds of opportunities? And as I said, it worked for me. I got that assignment and I got others after that because I was not shy about telling people what I wanted. And I think that was a big learning for me.
Perfect. So, Lee, what drives you and gives you, where do you find your passion to do what you do and to help people that you help?
Well, I guess it goes back to this, and you said it. I like helping people. I've got a passion for helping them solve complex problems by making them not so complex. Most problems are not that complex. You can break them down into smaller problems, or you can find ways to approximate what's going on and understand it. And I guess it's this dissatisfaction with satisfaction. I've worked in so many places where they're complacent, that they, things are going well, and they just say, well, there's no need to improve anything. There's no need, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And I remember one boss, or I read somewhere, told me, if it's working, it's obsolete. And I've kind of taken that to heart, and I'm just always kind of tinkering, not creating work for others. I don't view it that way. Maybe they do. But it's this constant dissatisfaction with satisfaction, and not trying to not be complacent and satisfied with the status quo. That has the negative side of it is I can get frustrated with people who are behaving that way, who just want to leave things alone. But I think my passion for doing what I do now, it's all about coming in and pointing out to people, like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, what are the landmines? What do you got to watch out for? And what can, to be successful in your career, especially as a new executive, and what can you do to avoid them, recover from them, or, minimize their impact on you and others around you?
Sure. When clients or prospective clients seek you out, what is the most common obstacle preventing them from creating this successful, environment or culture with these C-level executives? What's the biggest obstacle preventing them from succeeding?
Probably just not having the time to get to all of these things. They need to be more focused. They need to be better at delegating. They need to be, better at ferreting out, what's important, what isn't. But at the same time, they've got to understand the landscape that they're working in. And so often, when they're charged with accelerate growth, improve profitability, retain, more of our customers, which are the typical problems that, people seek us out for, or when they're having these problems, it's because they haven't invested enough time up front understanding, the strategic landscape. The other thing, it's very telling that a lot of times they'll call us not only when they're struggling with this, it's after they've tried to solve their problem once or twice and they haven't gotten the result they've wanted. That's our biggest competitor, is a CEO or CFO or marketing person saying, I can do that. I can do that myself. And it's more out of fear, or they feel threatened that if they ask someone, not just us, there's a lot of good consultants out there, but if they ask anyone for help, it shows, a weakness in themselves, or why do they need me? And at the end of the day, they don't get nearly everything they have to accomplished. So I think it's when they're starting to feel anxious or stressed out or overwhelmed by the tasks in front of them that they then say, we need some help. We need someone to help us get through this minefield.
What would you recommend that this prospective listener or reader what would you recommend how they can overcome some of these things you mentioned or some of these landmines? How can they successfully overcome those?
Well, some of the things that we learned, and I've written about some of this in some blogs, I mean, they've got to understand the culture. One, understand what that is, because you are not going to change it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard executives say, oh, we need to change the culture here. I mean, that doesn't happen that often, and if it does, it's not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart to attempt that. You're much better off understanding what you have, draw on its strengths, and hopefully with that you can overcome its deficiencies. But trying to change culture, that's tough, and again, I would only advise it in the most dire of circumstances. But other things I've learned, others have learned along the way, is you can't be afraid to ask others for their opinion. Yeah, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, but you don't know everything. You may think you have to display this air of great competence, but, learn to say, what do you think? Ask people, not just your direct reports. Go all the way down to the shop floor. Ask them, what do you think? They have great ideas, but they go untapped so often. The other one, just as what do you think, is avoid saying, I can do that myself. I can't tell you how many times, we hear CEOs say, well, I don't need, an outside consultant, or I don't need to delegate this. I can do that myself. It's going to take me more time, to fix what you do than to invest some time training you what to do or making sure my expectations are clear. You got to get comfortable delegating because there's just too much going on, and you've got to put your time, invest your time in those things where it's really going to make a difference, and that you can't delegate it. And strategy is one of those things. Some other tips are just one of the biggest ones, and now for the book I'm writing, I've interviewed about 25 executives, and one of the most common themes in there is don't hold on to an underperforming staff member too long. And I don't think there's one of them, and I'm guilty of this as well, of holding on to an underperforming team member beyond what's reasonable. And, you're always torn between how fast do I make this decision? Am I being fair to that person? In the end, I can't think of a time when, the initial judgment people had didn't pan out. Sure, you got to be fair to the person. Give them a chance, but don't wait a year, 2 years, 3 years to see if they'll turn around. Will they develop the skills? Will their attitudes change? My experience and those of so many others is, cut your losses. You're going to be much better off. So those are 3 or four things that I've learned along the way.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing those nuggets. Can you talk about or tell a quick story about how you've actually helped client overcome these obstacles in the past?
Well, we've had one where we were working on a consulting assignment, and the person, he just couldn't understand. It was the CEO, could not understand why he was having such trouble getting people to gain a commitment to the new strategic plan and to the direction that he wanted to take things. And in his defense, he said, I'm communicating the way I want to, I think I'm being transparent, and I'm doing it in a way that, I'd want to hear that message. And what we discovered as we went around, and this was part of a culture assessment, we were talking to the employees, and it became very clear very quickly that while the CEO was doing a lot of the right things, let's say on transparency and communicating the goals and constantly reminding people of them, he was doing it in a way that the people, everyone from the mailroom clerk, through to his direct reports in some cases, didn't really understand the message, didn't know how they could contribute. And while, this was the way the CEO would have wanted to hear the message, it wasn't the way the mailroom or the people, working in the factory wanted to hear it or knew how to contribute to the plan. And so we gathered all this data. We shared it back with the CEO. We did it in an anonymous way so that, there was no fear of retaliation. And, we worked with him once we understood how the messages had to be crafted, we actually worked with him, reviewed what he was going to say, helped him prep for those town hall meetings, for all employee meetings, for any kinds of publications he was putting out, to make sure that he was, had listened to the feedback he'd gotten from the employees. And that turned things around. Things really started to change where people got much more engaged and committed. And we could see that because we were measuring employee engagement over time. And there was a clear, you could see the improvement in employee engagement took a jump up and was maintained once the CEO changed his communication style. And it wasn't a big shift for him. It was just he was not aware that he was doing this. And so we were able to help them do that. And I think that made a huge difference for where they went with things.
Okay. This leads us into what would be some good reasons why a prospect or a client could easily benefit from working with you?
Well, I think, there's a lot of good consultants out there. Let me say that. I think what differentiates us is all of the people that I've got, and there's currently 8 of us that are advising clients. None of us started out as consultants. We have all been operating execs, C-level execs, in some of the largest companies in the world. And what we are very good at, each of us has demonstrated that we can take those big company best practices and learnings and ways of doing things and adapt them to the smaller company, to the middle market. So each of us was not a consultant to begin with. We have seen, globally best practices. We're able to bring them to our clients. We do it, at a much lower rate than the top consulting firms can do it. And the people working with me some of them have worked for those top consulting firms. The other thing is we don't have any associates or analysts doing the work. So you don't have any 25-year-olds, 29-year-olds doing the work. A lot of times when you work with the big consulting firms, you see the relationship partner or partner on the job when they sell the deal and then when they close it. And then in between, you don't see them at all. That isn't the way it is with us. The people doing the work are myself or the 7 or 8 other advisors we have. And again, we're all very seasoned C-level execs. I think that's a huge difference. So you're not going to be paying huge rates and then getting a 29-year-old that has not seen a lot of these issues or circumstances or situations. And the last thing I think that differentiates us is that we have some terrific tools. One of them we license. It's a very proven process that not everyone can license. You have to have a broad business background like we do to be able to even use the tool. But it's the tool we use for understanding the risk and quality of a company's operations. And some of the biggest accounting firms in the country, some of the biggest PE firms, private equity firms, are using the same tool. And what we've done is we've taken it from, they use it primarily for due diligence and sell-side due diligence and exit planning for baby boomers who are leaving their businesses. This tool is primarily used there. And we have transitioned it to being relevant and useful for the new executives. So we have, and the new executives, what's interesting about them is there's this sense of urgency to get things done, and there's a mandate for change. And we can come in with our experience and the tools that we have and lay out for them a value enhancement program. How do you build the value of the business? How do you move this forward? And how do you do it quickly? And I think for the reasons I just said, I won't say we're uniquely qualified, but we're very well qualified to do that kind of work.
Well, I would think so. That's awesome. I understand you're coming out with a new book. Could you give us a little preview of that?
Yeah, that should be out this spring, which means I have until, June 21st to get it done and out. But it's well along the way. I'm interviewing, it could be as many as 25 C-level execs, mostly CEOs, who have been successful in their jobs. And by successful, I mean they've gotten past the first 18 months. Heidrick & Struggles and the Corporate Executive Board have said 40 to 50% of C-level execs fail, quit, or are pushed out within the first 18 months of being on the job. And what we've identified, I mean, it's a huge number. Let me go back to that. It's a huge number, and I thought, oh, well, this is a relatively recent trend or occurrence. And in digging into the data, you find out it's been going on for 20 years. This isn't just since the crash of the stock market or some other events. It's been going on for 20 years, this high turnover rate in the C-suite. And in looking more deeply at it and talking to others in my own experience, we've identified 10, as you said early on, landmines or derailers of the career, such as coming in with the answer or overpromising and under-delivering or, just not getting alignment among all the team members. And any of these 10 landmines can literally end a C-level exec's career. And what we've identified, so I'm going around talking to 25 successful execs. They've been in their jobs more than 18 months. And what did they do to overcome these obstacles? And it's their bits of wisdom that will be in this book. And kind of a how-to or a best practices for not only a newly appointed exec, but even a seasoned exec can get something out of this because they'll say, oh, yeah, I got to do better at that, or I wasn't aware I was doing that. So it's going to have that. It's got some exercises at the end of each chapter that will be easy for the new exec to hone his skills, his or her skills, if you will. And it should be early reads by others, of it are, should be pretty interesting for people. So I'm excited to finish it.
Great. Yeah, we're looking forward to that to be released. So if somebody's ready to get started with you, what's the best way to learn more about you and how to get started?
Well, certainly there's our website, and the website's really easy, www.valuedriversllc.com. And Value Drivers LLC is all one word. You go there, you can see who all the senior advisors are, what we do, who we work best with. The blog that we post something out there about every 2 weeks is there. Just pick up the phone. Give me a call. My direct number is area code 312-827-2643, and that's on our website. Also on our website, if you just want to schedule a 30-minute phone call, you can just go there, and with a click of a button, you'll get my calendar and when I'm available, and you can schedule a meeting with us. So I'd say schedule a meeting, give me a call, visit our website.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was a great interview. You had a lot of great nuggets for our listeners. So thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you, Tracy. This has been great.
Well, there you have it. Until the next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.